year at 2.06, 7-year at 2.55, 10-year at 3.05, 15-year at 3.5, and 20-year at 4.18. And those are, we're
going to start the meeting.
I did. I was having a meeting.
Right, some great bond rates for everyone in
Supporting our South Carolina.
We can continue that later, though. That's an interesting. Okay, I'd like to welcome everyone to the Strategic and Legacy Management Committee meeting. It is Tuesday, June 9th, and I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Bob Dorr, and I am the chairman of the chair of the Strategic and Legacy Management Committee. The vice chair of this committee is James Streeter, seated to my left. Also, other committee members are Gil Allensworth, David Hoyle, Clint Nagel, George Snyder, and Mary Weber. Before we proceed, what I'd like to do is ask for an introduction of all the attendees for the meeting tonight. I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Bob Dorr.
Hi, the meeting started. If you could mute your computer or your phone, one of the two. Thank you.
Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask for all attendees, both local and online and on the phone, to identify themselves just by name and, you know, what they're doing. So let's see. We'll start up at the beginning with the CAB support people.
Standard CAB support team.
Elise Carrico, I'm the acting federal coordinator for the CAB.
David Hoyle, CAB.
Gil Allensworth, CAB.
Bob Dorr, CAB.
Harold Simon, CAB.
James Streeter, CAB. George Snyder, CAB.
Okay. Members of the public, would you like to identify yourselves?
I'm the new chair of the DOE. My name is Daniel Leonard.
I'm Anne Sal. I'm also intern. Emily Wilson. Megan Peterson, also intern.
Thank you.
Rich Olson, DOE.
Michael Nicholas, DOE.
So,
Seth Cameron, DA.
Thank you. And then do we have an what?
I'm Municipal LA on the CAB.
Okay. And then do we have any online attendees this evening?
This is Deidre Lloyd with EPA. I'm on the phone and online.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm sorry, what?
Yeah.
Oh.
I'm sorry, Jessica Pearson, CAB 14.
Dave Hefner, DOE.
Okay. Okay, I think we've identified everyone. I'd like to stress to everyone that the meetings are being recorded live and that you should please state your name and affiliation before speaking. Please speak loudly and clearly for the record, and also be warned if you're just talking that the microphones can pick up idle chatter. So please address any of your comments directly to the meeting coordinator, myself. I'd like to stress the importance of keeping to the agenda topics during the meeting. I also want the general public to know that there will be a public comment period where other comments can be heard. Anyone wishing to answer questions or address the CAB, we would ask them to come up. We don't have a podium, but they can come up and speak towards the microphone so that everyone can hear, both here and online. But there is no public comment sign-up sheet. So you will have a public comment period built into this agenda. Also, just as a matter of record, ask both the CAB members and the public to sign in on the sheets that are available. CAB members, I hope you've all signed in. If you haven't, the roster's right here. Pass it around. Thank you. And there should be a sign-in for the general public. I'll also make a note right here. The next committee meeting is August 11th from 4:30 p.m. to 6:20 p.m. at the new Ellington Community Center. That's for the Strategic and Legacy Management Committee. And that's at 212 Pine Avenue, New Ellington, South Carolina, 29809. Okay. August the 11th. Monday, excuse me, probably Tuesday, August 11th. The purpose of this committee, okay, I'll just read this in. The committee purpose, this committee looks at long-term stewardship, long-term policy, planning, and other strategic matters, including issues that cross-cut the work of other CAB committees. Its work includes many problematic topics. Specific areas of interest include development and deployment of technology, the SRS budget decision-making process, future land use, facility disposition, and relevant national environmental policy. Okay, we do have a recommendation update. We do have the Strategic Legacy Management Committee has one open recommendation. That is recommendation number 323, safety procedures and emergency preparedness and response at the Savannah River site and other Department of Energy sites. Okay. Next point on our agenda, DOE is responding to recommendation 322. At each committee meeting, the respective DOE point of contact will provide a brief status update of ongoing SRS activities relevant to this committee's purpose. Tonight, Rich Olson will begin his short update. DOE has asked that we hold questions on this update because it is intended as an informational status update and not a presentation. So at this point, I would like to ask Rich Olson to give us that status.
Sit at the table.
Certainly can. Certainly can.
Thank you. I'm Rich Olson, DOE. I'm in the Integration and Planning Organization, and I work for Bill Clark, and I'm substituting for him. I have really three areas of updates for this committee. One is in the area of organization change at the site, and an area of budgets, and the area of planning. The organization, many of you know, we have a new site manager. Jack Craig assumed that position of site manager on June 1st, so he's fully on board now and fully engaged. Jack Craig is somewhat ironic, but prior to Dave Moody's tenure here, he was the interim site manager for about a year, and then he went and served in positions at headquarters and in Cincinnati. But we're excited to have Jack here to take over the reins here. In the area of budgets, as Doug Hensey, when he presents budget updates to you, it's really we're kind of working three budgets at the same time, 3 different years. We have the and we talk about fiscal year, which is the year that starts in October 1st. That's when our years of budgets start. And so we are working the fiscal year 2015 right now, and that budget is really, we're managing and tracking the execution of our budget, which has been authorized for this year from headquarters in Congress. So that budget, we're now basically managing, tracking to that, and holding ourselves accountable to that level of funding expenditures. We're also, though, we have submitted the budget request for FY16, that's 2016 budget, and that budget had been submitted up to headquarters, and it's been reviewed by the president, and he has provided his recommendations to Congress. So we're waiting for final appropriation from Congress for FY16, and we're not sure exactly when we'll get that authorization. Obviously, would like to have that prior to the year starting, but in years past, it gets delayed, and we work with on something that's called continuing resolution until the budget gets approved. But that budget's up there and being reviewed by headquarters and waiting for appropriation approval. We had just also submitted to headquarters the budget request for 2017. That was sent to headquarters in May, and we're waiting for feedback on funding levels and priorities. What they do is they ask all the sites to submit budget requests. They'll look at all of the sites' requirements and needs and prioritize work among the complex. They will give us, you know, within a couple of months, some new direction of how to maybe adjust those budgets. So, so the work is, going back, FY16, I said 2015, that budget we're tracking. The other two budgets, we're waiting for approval on different aspects of that. So our concern is that funding is always been continuing to be tight, so these budgets will be tight, and obviously we won't be able to do everything we would like to do, but we're certainly prioritizing things as best we can with the needs of the site. The third area that I want to just update you on, and again, just reflect first of all, budgets are ongoing. I mean, that's the constant organization, and we get requests from headquarters, and did you think of this? Did you work this? And we have to continue to work that. But now shifting over to the area of planning, two major areas of planning. If you recall back in the fall of last year, if you were on the cab, then Doug presented a budget, which plan rather, that's called the environmental management, the life cycle estimate, which lays out the total requirements to clean up the site and lay out what our assumptions are, how long it's going to take us to do that. And so, and we do that budget update. I'm sorry, it's a plan, it's not a budget, but we do that outlook of that plan every year. And as you recall, last year we did this, and we determined that it's going to take us longer to clean up the site than in the past. And that was basically because the budget funding constraints, that it's going to take us longer because we'll have much less funding. Well, we're working now on the latest assumptions for an update of that plan. We've developed the assumptions for that budget. We're basically keeping the funding levels the same as we assumed last year, basically. And so we'll be working that budget, and we hope to submit that plan for, and that's sort of like almost a 50-year plan of cleaning up the site. We will submit an update to that plan to headquarters in the fall. And when we do that, then we'll be able to share that latest look with the public at that time. The last aspect of planning is a new plan that we are focusing on for this year, and that's called a site infrastructure plan. That's really focused on planning for the next 10 years the needs of the infrastructure of the site. The site is a very large site with hundreds of miles of roads and railroads and bridges and buildings and steam lines and water, and so that's what we call the infrastructure of the site. And that infrastructure is required for us to, you know, do our mission of the site of cleaning up the site. So, but that infrastructure much of that infrastructure was built in the 1950s and the 60s, and there are some concerns of us having that infrastructure last long enough for us to finish our mission. So we're going through a very detailed phase of what are the requirements of the infrastructure. Is there parts of the infrastructure we can make smaller now that the site is not an active nuclear site in terms of the way it was back in the 1980s? And also, what are our requirements for road upgrades, building upgrades, things like new roofs and things like that. So that plan is being developed, and we'll have that completed by the end of this year. And again, we hope to share the needs of that. And of course, that plan ties into budgets because you need to get funding to do that. We try to do a little bit of infrastructure upgrades each year along with the program budgets to maintain that, but we're getting to a point that we want to make sure we don't have any major things that we haven't identified that we need to work on. So again, we are embarking on that 10-year infrastructure plan as we speak, and hopefully by the end of the year we'll have a plan that we can share. That's basically my update for this committee.
Okay, Rich, thank you very much. We'd like to move on to the next point of our agenda this evening, and that is a presentation by Mr. David Hepner from DOE. And the topic for presentation tonight is the small minority business utilization Savannah River site. And this is a topic that for committee presentation that we developed over the winter, and I think it should be rather interesting. I don't believe Dave has presented before to the CAB. Dave, is that correct?
I've been here 32 years, so probably so.
Some CAB meeting in the past, or
a lot of you CAB members haven't been here 32 years.
No, that's for sure. Well, I want you all to welcome Dave, and David, I'm going to turn over the microphone to you.
Okay, thank you very much. I've been with Savannah River for over 32 years, 35, 6 years with the government. So, in a lot of those years here at Savannah River, been doing small business, community affairs, economic diversification, because we weren't allowed to call it development. But Bridgestone Firestone was a big thing for me. Small business, and I truly appreciate you all being interested in small business, because that's the lifeblood of the community. It's the lifeblood of many, many jobs and households. I'm going to provide some information, both historical as well as the path forward, where we're going with small business at the site. I'm going to give you some of the driving regulations. As you well know, there are regulations out your yin-yang. No way around it. There are rules. And then there are things that are just right things to do. And that's what we usually concentrate on. We know the regulations. What we want to do is get the right business to help us meet the mission. And then, of course, it fulfills one of your requests to have a committee work plan topic. And I always enjoy giving good news stories. As far as the Small Business Administration, it's been around since 1953. Their biggest thing is to make sure that small business gets their fair share. It is also there to enlighten small businesses and businesses in general on how to do business with the government. And one of the biggest things is that they have a requirement right now that 23% of what we buy goes to small business. Now, I will start this off with, we've got a codicil. As you well know, the Department of Energy is the second largest buyer in the government. But guess where most of that goes? Big business. So, one of the things that we have worked hard to do is work with SBA and say, okay, the M&O contracts and some of these big cleanup contracts, that money needs to be cut out of the equation because there's not a thing I can do about that. Let's look at the things that I have to buy. What's my procurement base for that particular fiscal year? That's the measure that I have to be used, okay? And the other thing that the SBA does is, as well as many government agencies, they come in and inspect. And I'm getting that wonderful pleasure later on this month when they come down and review how we're doing. The last time that we had a review was about 4 or 5 years ago. The major finding there was that we weren't sending the forms to the what they call a procurement center representative electronically, and so he had constant things coming in on his fax machine, and he wasn't always in the office, and there was always a delay. So anyway, that was one of the major things that he came up with last time. And at that time, we were looking at breaking out some things from the management and operating contractor to award direct DOE contracts for some functions. I'd love to be able to tell you that was a blooming success. Unfortunately, many of the M&O contractors have this thing called the defined benefit plan. What that is the pension plan that pays the employees. And the Secretary Bodman made a declaration that if you're in, you're in. Now, what does that mean? That meant that if you are in the defined benefit plan, you couldn't be exited from the defined benefit plan. Well, if you go after a small business, as you well know, they're used to being able to do QuickBooks and things like that. If they had to become a fiduciary on our defined benefit plan, I'm not so sure that many small businesses wouldn't go out of business. It is, and I've been dealing with the pension plan for several years. It is a monstrosity, and to put your bank account at risk for that, it's not really worth it. So if I can split out the work and not have legacy employees doing the work, I can get it done. So those are the challenges that I have. Next slide. I'm sorry, I should have told you that before. There are really 5 different types of small businesses. There's a small disadvantaged business, or also known as an 8A, Section 8A. I've got sole source authority to sole source contract with an 8A firm up to $4 million, no competition. Woman-owned small business. There are now rules coming out, haven't come out just yet, but will allow me to go up to $3 million to woman-owned small business. Service-disabled veteran-owned small businesses. All the service-disabled veteran has to do is display their DD 214 that says that they have been injured while they were in the service. Not a whole lot of paperwork to follow that. They're going to get that when they get out of the service. And then you have regular small business. Now, there are no set-asides for regular small business. You have to compete for small business. HubZone. I will tell you that this is probably one of the most perplexing pieces of legislation that SBA has. And not so much because of the legislation, but how it's been implemented. And I will tell you that Savannah River historically has been below the goal for HubZone. The reason being is because You have to have the business in the hub zone. You have to have 70% of the employees of that business in the hub zone. And the work be close to or adjacent to the hub zone. Now, where's the hub zone? Bartonville and Allendale. That's significant. There is not a hub zone in Aiken County. Okay? So it's pretty tough to get the hub zone businesses. Each year, SBA does workshops. They hold conferences all across the country. Matter of fact, Parado, who is my small business program manager, Parado Mays, is heading to Phoenix, Arizona. I think it's either next week or the week after. I looked at it and I said, who wants to go to Phoenix in summer? You want to go to Phoenix when it's a little. So, but anyway, Parado's going out there to meet. This is the 13th or 14th annual Small Business Conference, and I will pat myself on the back. And the largest one that we ever had in the history of DOE was held in Atlanta, Georgia, where we had 1,790 some people attend. So I enjoy saying that because, as usual, everything goes to Atlanta. We do one-on-one counseling. We have training workshops. We meet with everybody. We have networking opportunities. We don't do as much management and technical guidance as we used to, mainly because most of the businesses that are coming to us now, they have their business plan already together. They don't need any help, which is good. We answer a ton of emails. I can tell you that there's never less than between 25 and 50 emails a day. I usually use the Aiken Design Center. I sometimes use the library over here to meet with them. Why is that? It's a lot easier to meet with them outside the site so that you don't have to go through all the badging. So they come in and they do self-marketing presentations. And that's how we get things done. We do know what it is that we need done. We just listen to them on how they would accomplish the work. Next slide. Title 13 of the CFR covers contracting opportunities for small businesses. This is the regulatory part. I'm not going to bore you with it. I will tell you that we have a DOE SBA partnership. And what that means is because we have a lot of buying, after the last interaction with the reviewers for us, we couldn't get a hold of the PCR and send the forms to him. We worked out an agreement between the SBA and ourselves and the Department of Energy that if it was $4 million or less, I'd send an informational copy. I don't have to go get the form signed and then wait for that for the award and go through all the paperwork exercise. And so far, of course, it's plastic. It's worked. Okay. More businesses have enjoyed that capability to go on and get the job started. The next slide 6 goes over what the prime goals are. Now that 23% is the overall goal. The 5, 5, 3, and 3 is encompassed in that 23. Okay, so don't think that it's an adder. We do get a scorecard every year, and I can't remember the Congresswoman's name, but she's from New York, and she has remember the one congressman that used to have the Golden Fleece Award.
I remember.
Yeah.
But this lady focuses on small business where agencies have just blown it off, and she blows them up at their budget hearing. She says, you know, we've given you all this money. Why in the world can't you contract with small business to get the mission done. And everybody goes, well, you know, it's a specialty, it's this, that, the other. Anyway, it's an interesting dialogue between the two. Because we have such large contracts, and I've told you about if you grade me on my percentages to the actual procurement base that I'm buying things that year, I come out pretty good. Now, if you compare it to the 1.2 billion that I have at the site, I don't come out as well, but it's not too bad. And of course, I told you we tried to do some small business breakout of M&O tasks. What's interesting is that while DOE couldn't bring this off, the contractor has taken all my paperwork and is beginning to look at these things. So you've probably seen in the newspaper that they're looking for laboratory space, big ads in the Chronicle and the Standard. They're also going to be looking at warehousing, medical, and on the medical side, it's not just medical for the site. If we can find, let's use as an example. Here we are at New Ellington at the community centers. Wouldn't it be nice if there was a medical facility somewhere here in New Ellington that the site could use and the community? It's not just for us, and it's not just for the community. That's what we're thinking. That's what we're trying to do. We're trying to incorporate some of the things. We don't need this big monstrosity medical facility like we used to have. When we were operating 5 reactors, 2 canyons, DWPF, tritium, the whole 9 yards, yes, we needed medical facilities quickly. We don't have that anymore. You already heard that the infrastructure needs on the site are great, and the funding is minimal. That's why we're looking for partnerships. And so I look for small businesses to step up to the plate and be those partners. Seven, please. What's our rationale? Like I said, it's just good business. It also allows us to look at how things are getting done and how can we get the biggest bang for the buck. Not literally, but figuratively, and try to get things done. SRS and SRR have what we call a local area set-aside capability to use local firms. I will tell you right now, as Fred Humes asked me, why can't you do that? Well, there's federal law that says I can't do that, and I don't look good in orange. Sorry, Clemson. So I don't do that. Okay, but they do have that capability to keep things local. What kind of things do we have them doing? Well, staff aug tremendously. What we have focused the contractor on is staff for the valleys, use staff augmentation for the peaks. That way, we're not having a lot of people on the rolls in case of the budget cut. So, material suppliers. I can't tell you the number of trucks that come in the Savannah River site that are small business, delivering stuff. Construction, we have, matter of fact, you all have gotten briefings on SBU 6 for SRR, right? That big monolith. That's a small business doing it. Now, they have some large business help, but it's a small business actually constructing that facility. Consulting, of course we have consulting. I used to always call it dollar a dozen, but I mean, even the construction people still have to follow the Davis-Bacon Act for paying wages, as well as the Service Contract Act for consulting on other things. Okay. Page 8. Here's where the rubber meets the road. SRS in 14 did about $84 million worth of business with small business. Savannah River remediation, about almost 32 million. Parsons, it was kind of tough to get Parsons to break the things down, so I just didn't pursue it anymore. But I do know that they do a lot of things with small business. Matter of fact, the original makers of some of the tanks was a small business. Centera, 3.3. DOE, I basically have a budget of about 15 to 18 million dollars to buy stuff. And as you can see, about 13.5 million of that is with small business. My default is small. If a contracting officer brings something to me and it's not a small business, they have to sit on my sofa and tell me why. Mm-hmm. And I will assure you that there's not a whole lot of people that like sitting on my sofa and telling me why. Because I send them back to the drawing board. The goals are formed by actual procurement dollars, and we look at it closely. I will tell you that for the most part, for SRR and SRS, I'm looking between 50 and 55% of what they buy to be from a small business. Centera, not so much, because believe it or not, they buy a lot of bullets and things like that. There's not a small business that makes bullets. In summary, small business is the backbone of our area. I would wage many of the small businesses, including, as you well know, the cab support staff is a small business. It is a Alaskan native-owned company that's 8A, and they are doing a jam-up job for us. And I know they're doing a good job for you guys too. So I've been an advocate for small business for a long time, and that's what I want to see do our mission work. Does anyone have any questions?
Nina,
do y'all work with the Small Business Association from the governor's office in South Carolina?
Yeah, we go to they have that thing at the conference center. I call it meet and greet, but they have I believe they call it the Business Networking Conference. And we have a lot of one-on-one. Sometimes we take as many as 5 and 6 people to it, both contractor and DOE. Yes, sir.
Harold Steinman, Cab. Do you monitor prime contractors subcontracting to the 4 types of small business?
Oh, yeah.
And what percentage is required by the federal law?
Well, like I said, I'm looking between 50 and 55. And then, of course, you've got the 5, 3, and 3. You have to buy that year, I might boost that. Okay? It just depends on what they have to buy. But it's never less than this. Yep.
Dave, this is Bob Dorcap. Going back to slide 8 for a minute. I thought it was very interesting. The different contractors, obviously, that DOE is employing, and you've benchmarked, if you will, the total dollars for fiscal year 14. That's Savannah River Nuclear Solutions, Savannah River Remediation, Centera. You've got the actual amount of dollars that they spent using small business. Now, I think I understand your role as part of DOE. When it comes to the contractors using small business, you're monitoring what the contractors, you do the benchmarking. So these numbers are actually numbers that you know.
They have to certify this twice a year. There's one that comes in March, but the end of March, usually about April, I can go into the system and look at it. And then they also send me a printout of all the transactions,
Okay.
and that's usually about that day.
I was gonna, okay.
And half a dozen or more,
Mhm.
pull the file, look at it, find out, pull the string.
So really, again, to elaborate on my question, really the contractors have to really, they know what services they need to provide contractually to DOE. So are they really the initiators of finding these small businesses to,
I think it's all of us. When I first took over small business many moons ago, I stopped having an SRS small business. At that time, it was WSRC. It was the Savannah River Site Small Business. You go to the conferences, we all work as one. You know how you guys have your I call it dog and pony show to go to different things?
Mhm.
We do too. And all of us, all the contractors and the buyers and everything, we're all at the same booth. Now, I will tell you that Centerra and the major contractors do go to their parent company's booths every so often and help out.
Mhm.
But for the most part, they're with the Savannah River Site Small Business Program. And there's a lot of interchange between all of us. If we find a good contractor, we talk about it.
Mhm.
If somebody else has a need for it, they use that contract.
So Dave, again, Bob Dorcap, is it fair to say then the contractors, obviously this is like a government requirement that contractors and Department of Energy in general, that you're using the Small Business Administration, that you're trying to get business to the local smaller employers. Would you say it's fair that the contractors welcome this, that they would prefer to do business this way than to just streamline it back to other parts of the country and have?
I think they have embraced the small business program.
Okay.
I don't know whether it's because Hefner beats the living, what out of them or what, but they, SRNS and SRR also have what we call mentor-protege agreements with some small businesses, where they basically bring them in under the wings, teach them the accounting, all the things, how to be a biggin when they graduate. Because remember, the goal of the 8A program is that for 9 years, you go get the necessary experience, because in year 10, you're graduating, and you're no longer an 8A small business. And so it gives them the opportunity. When SRNS bid the contract, they actually had a small business as a partner in the actual bid. Now they since got bought up by a big business.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
But I mean, at the same time, it's a way of doing business, and for the most part, I haven't heard any real complaint.
Mm-hmm.
I really haven't. I mean, the hardest part, I will tell you, the first thing, if I walk into a conference or whatever, if there's been a solicitation and a company, a small business, did not even get considered, they'll call me and they'll say, it's a closed thing. Okay? And I'll say, tell me more. And of course, they tell me more. And I start pulling the string.
Mm-hmm.
Well, what usually comes out is that, yes, they were in the running, but their proposal didn't address something that was a requirement. Well, can't, unless you're going to go back to all the proposers, you can't help them fix it.
Mm-hmm.
Now, at the debrief, you can say, well, here's where you have a problem.
Okay.
And tend to, if it's a small business especially, I tend to make them do debriefs so that they're better the next time.
Sure. Makes sense to me.
I'm eating what you're saying for serving. I appreciate everything you do. What is an 8A? I mean,
8A.
Can you define that?
It's usually minority owned, small business. I tell you, I call it almost having to sell your soul to get that 8A status. You put your personal finances, the company finances, the company operations, your business plan, all in SBA's hands. And they do some reviews. And they will then either certify you as an 8A. Around here, I will tell you that if you want to become an 8A, go to the Small Business Development Center over at USC-Aiken. I don't believe I have seen a better group of people to sit down with you and walk you through your plan, and they play murder board with it. They tell you where your weaknesses are. And, you know, this is all great, but you don't have cash flow until month 10. And your cash flow runs out in month 4. What are you going to do for those 6 months? It's hard for a small business person to hear, okay, because they've poured their life and soul into this thing. But at the same time, FDA guarantees the performance if you win a contract. So if they do run into problems, SBA steps in there and mentors them.
And what is the SBA calling a small business? Is it a sales number? Is it net?
It depends on the issue, okay? There's the number of employees, or there's a dollar figure, your income.
Right.
Okay? Your sales. And depending on the North American Industrial Classification System, NAICS for short, it will either be how many people you have employed, and I will tell you that no small business has more than 500 people.
Right.
Okay. You either have 500 as the cap, or it's usually between 20 and 25 million. Right? I will tell you that if I was a small business and I had $20 to $25 million a year in sales, I'd be a real happy camper.
Small business. Yeah, real happy small business.
Because, you know, I'm a board of directors. The hours are terrible.
And you said something at the beginning, like right before you started, you said Bridgestone Firestone was one of your things you're proud of.
Yeah.
Why?
We got involved with Bridgestone Firestone. As you well know, we downsized in 1992, 93. It was significant downsized. The department was granted impact aid, and at that time, Bridgestone Firestone was looking for a new American headquarters. And some of the Aiken Edgefield Economic Development Partnership, as well as the Department of Commerce, came to us, the DOE, and said, we've got some infrastructure. We need to run a rail line from the main line over to what came to be Sage Mill. And so we put together a package, went to headquarters, talked to Washington, and they said, absolutely.
Okay, I understand.
And so that's a big deal. We don't have those funds anymore because, as usual, there was always some issues with when you do things like that. You have successes, and then you have some real bad failures, and the real bad failures seem to rise to the Congress people's eyes a whole lot more than the successes. Anything else?
Hi, David. Bob Dorcab. Going back to slide 4, Gil Allensworth, I think, asked some of these questions that I was going to ask already about what is an 8A firm and so forth. small businesses located in historically underutilized business zones. I think you said that SRS is below the goal to identify small businesses in underutilized business zones. Is this Aiken community?
Aiken doesn't have it. Barnwell has portions. Allendale, it's just about the whole county.
So Aiken is not a underutilized. Okay, but Barnwell is.
Barnwell has pockets. It's not all over.
Right.
Now, what the issue is, I will tell you, downtown Barnwell is not a hub zone. Snelling is a hub zone. Okay? So it's just, you can go on the SBA website and type in hub zone, and this wonderful color map will come up.
Okay.
And it'll tell you where the hub zones are. It won't tell you where the companies are. It'll just tell you that. And I will tell you that they do a good job at making sure that somebody's not playing the system, where they say, you know, I'm in Snelling. Well, really, you have a post office box in Snelling, and you're really working out of Columbia. So they look at those.
So, I mean, someone's got a building in downtown, if they're headquartered out of downtown Columbia,
Bingo.
but they put a warehouse in
Yep.
Barnwell.
Yeah. And they call that the headquarters.
Okay.
But
Bob,
most
do-
of the employees are in
Sure.
Columbia.
But I guess that was Bob Dorcab again. That was going to lead to my next question. Then, can SRS go outside the hub zone? It sounds like.
Oh yeah. The issue is all the red tape that goes along of the people living in the hub zone too.
Yeah.
Okay, so that Allendale is not a metropolis. Barnwell's not a metropolis.
Right.
Aiken and Augusta.
Sure.
There's very few hub zones in Richmond and Columbia County.
See, I kind of viewed this whole topic as something that's very positive for the Savannah River site, you know.
It is. We have won, now we haven't won the Eisenhower, which is the top award, in several years. But I will say that's probably because we haven't done a good job of writing the Cotton Picket Award nomination.
Mm-hmm.
It's not that we don't have the success stories.
Mm-hmm.
I would basically say that we could probably go after it for the SDU 6 project.
Mm-hmm.
But until it's done, I don't think I can do anything.
Okay. Well, again, Bob Dorcab, to me, I just wanted to note for the record that, you know, like, you're trying to identify small businesses close to the Savannah River site, but really, any small business that's located in South Carolina that can benefit by providing services or products.
When we go to Columbia, we meet with people. I was in Charleston 2 years ago and came up with a construction firm and a firm that does Velcro stuff.
Mm.
And Wackett had latched on to them. So, yeah, it just depends.
Yeah.
Depends on what the need is. And we get together and we discuss before a major conference, you know, what are the needs? What's upcoming? So that we have a list that when we sit down one-on-one with the company, and as well as beforehand, because we send it to the conference chairs, saying, here's what we're looking for. You make sure that when we have our one-on-one, or they call it matchmaking, when we have our matchmaking session, these are the companies that we want. I will tell you that whenever I go, I normally get 70% IT firms. And I'm sitting there going, okay, but I really don't need IT. You know, I've got an IT function.
Mm-hmm.
If I have something special, we do have a lot of Oracle databases. If we need some manipulation, yeah, we'll go out to a small business for it. But there's always the call for something big.
Mm. Does the state of South Carolina provide any support for small business? I mean,
They do have an office.
yeah.
And they have a certification program, and the chairman of that, chairwoman, called me at one time and she said, you know, we really want to partner. I said, look, here's my problem. Our things have to have that SBA moniker on it. You know, it's nice that you do these things. However, that doesn't hold any weight in doing procurements with the government or with our contractors. In essence, what gets us points is those SBA certifications.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, we try to look for some companies that have multiple designations. It might be a woman-owned 8A.
Right.
They may be located in a hub zone. Oh, there's a triple winner.
Right.
They're few and far between. So, I mean, you know, you just sit back and say, okay.
That's great.
Yes, sir.
David Hoyle, Cap. Tell us a little bit about the lessons learned from Parsons. You mentioned that the first contractor for their vessels, they failed.
Yeah.
And it had huge implications for the liquid waste program that we're feeling even today.
Mm-hmm.
What are the lessons learned from that failure?
Was it a small business?
Yeah, it was.
It was a company that built the vessels that went into the solid waste processing.
Six vessels that needed to be lowered.
They took forever and then ultimately failed in producing those vessels. They had to go to a second contractor.
Yes.
Was the second contractor a small business as well?
No. Lessons learned. Do your due diligence when you're sitting down and reviewing the packages. You look at the financial viability. You look at what have they delivered on time. Because in essence, especially with something like that, you got to have a track record. I mean, it's not something that, you know, you can do in the back of a machine shop. You have to have a lot of quality controls. You have to have a lot of record keeping that many small shops don't have. I cannot remember whether that had to be NQA1. It did? Okay. If it's NQA1, they're gold coin. If you ever talk to an NQA1 company, they will have a gold coin posted on their wall that they have earned through being evaluated, tested, the whole 9 yards. NRC comes in and does a number of inspections, and they inspect your record keepings and your quality assurance program, where you buy your raw materials, how do you do your welding, the whole 9 yards. So, short answer is you have to do your due diligence. And sometimes things happen.
Gil Allen, did it fail because it was a small business, or did it fail just because they were improper? I mean, could it have failed on a large business scale?
Oh, yeah, it could have failed on a large business scale, too. They had problems with their suppliers. They had problems with the welding. I mean, I will tell you, and from the bottom of my heart, if you have a youngster that doesn't know what they want to do, become a welder. Honest to God, you can make $100,000 being a welder if you're a good welder. And you know, they're being sucked up over at Vogel, at VC Sumner. Yeah, we are in a constant battle in the site to hold on to operators, welders, not so much on the carpenters, but I mean, yeah, those kind of professions right now are very hard to hold on to.
Good.
Anything else? Well, I appreciate you asking me to present. Hopefully, if you have any further questions, let them know, and I'll be glad to answer.
Okay. David, I'd like to thank you for your presentation. Before we move on, I'd like to ask this committee, I would recommend that we ask Dave Hepner to present at the full board meeting in July, this particular topic under the Strategic and Legacy Management Committee. Does everyone agree with me on that one?
Agreed.
Okay, great.
Second.
Okay. Thank you. I don't think we need a vote.
Like the phone number, contact cards with, Dave's information, because I imagine if we get public participation, that's something that always comes out of the EJ meetings, is who can we call if we're a small business?
Oh, yeah.
Have that information at the full board meeting?
I've got that.
That would be helpful.
Point of contact is one of my last slides.
Right. I think, Nina, that's a good suggestion because we'll have a lot more public participation at the full board meeting. So that'd be a great way to advertise to the.
Not a problem. Got it already.
Thanks again, David.
We've also got a presentation. I call it canned because we've gone through it a lot of times. But you know, if a group of people, I went down and talked to the American Society of Military Engineers down at Savannah, how to do business with the Savannah River site. I've got a really good thing going through that. Paying attention to what the requirements are, the statement of work, what sections to look at in the solicitation. So
Well,
that presentation will travel.
You should add that to your presentation for the for your full board meeting. Yeah, you should talk about that. I think that would be very useful. I think that's a real life example that I'm sure the general public would like to hear. Okay, again, Bob Dorr, CAB speaking. We're at a point in our agenda where we have a committee, we scheduled time for a committee discussion on a draft recommendation that I believe was initiated by Nina Spinelli. Our recommendation manager is David Hoyle. The recommendation is called Improve Public Participation. The Strategic and Legacy Management Committee is co-sponsoring this recommendation with the, let's see, would be the Facility Disposition and Site Remediation Committee. Thank you, David. But I think because David is the recommendation manager, ultimately the final draft that goes, if we feel this recommendation should go to the full board, David will probably wind up managing this. So I'm going to ask David to talk about this recommendation in terms of what his input, the input that he's received from our committee members and other interested parties. And also if there's any, this committee can also offer at this time any additional changes, suggestions, improvements to this recommendation. But the goal is to come together with a product that if this committee feels we can support this, that we'll want to bring it to the full board and present it. So David, do you have any?
Yeah, thank you. I'm just going to go through it real quickly. May not have had a chance to read it before, so bear with me. We have standard operating procedures for the CAB, and in those procedures, the purpose is for the CAB is to provide independent advice and recommendations to DOE. And we draw from diverse community viewpoints to provide that advice and recommendations to DOE. We're also in our section 2 of the standard operating procedures to provide for public involvement in our advisory processes by making information available to the public, holding public meetings, communicating efforts and results, and creating opportunities for the public to participate in our process. And we also serve as an interface with other boards and groups in dealing with SRS issues to share that information and avoid unwanted duplication of efforts. Now, our membership is also supposed to be broadly constituted to consist of diverse groups of people representing interests and concerns of the community that we live in and that are affected by the Savannah River site. Now, given that scope and our charter and our standard operating procedures, there's a call for geographic and demographic diversity within the CAB, and our meetings, we believe, should be hosted in locations that maximize opportunities for such public participation. After all, the areas affected by the Savannah River site are broad and include counties both in South Carolina and Georgia, including Aiken, Barnwell, Allendale, Hampton, Jasper, Beaufort counties in South Carolina, and Richmond, Burke, Scriven, Effingham, and Chatham counties on the Georgia side.
Mm-hmm.
Now, in the not too distant past, CAB meetings were held in many different locations, both here in South Carolina and in Georgia, specifically in Hilton Head, in Columbia, South Carolina, and in Augusta on an annual basis. But in 2014, virtually all of the SRS CAB meetings were held only in Aiken County, and full board meetings were also only held in Aiken County except for one downstream meeting in Beaufort. And in 2015, virtually all of our meetings again will be held only in Aiken County except for one that we recently held in Savannah, Georgia. So, in order to reverse that trend, we have 4 specific recommendations within this recommendation. And they are to hold CAB meetings in a more geographically diverse manner to allow counties affected by SRS to host more regional meetings and to enable greatest public participation. We ask that meetings be reinstated at Hilton Head, Columbia, and Augusta on a frequent basis to enhance the public's opportunity to attend and actively participate in our meetings. Maximize efforts to advertise CAB meetings and alert the public. This should include updated social media information, newspaper information, and enhancing ways to advertise CAB meetings through city and county council notification. 3, restore funding for advertising to the SRS CAB to improve advertising of full board and committee meetings to broadly notify the public. Advertising should include newspapers in the host city where the meeting is occurring. And 4, enable CAB representation when planning SRS local public education and outreach events, such as information pods, public tours, Earth Day, etc. I welcome any input from the committee.
I've got Mary Weber Cab. I've got one question. Who decides the location of the meeting?
Harold, I think you can answer that, right?
Is it DOE or is it?
Well, in the past, the board met at the downstream meetings, Savannah, Charleston, Hilton Head, Columbia, Augusta, and Beaufort. We were there last year. And because of the budgetary restraint, without any consultation with the board, DOE decided that we are not going to have these meetings anymore, and we were basically informed of that, and we did not have an opportunity to provide input. And so we believe that if communities that are affected by SRS, we cannot expect them to travel for this location every meeting, some people just will not come because they don't have the means to get here. And so we need to be holding our meetings in the various counties where.
Okay, so this was a budget, the reason why we're here most of the time is a budgetary decision because this is the most cost
That's
effective.
what we would do, yes. David?
Yes, sir.
On paragraph 3,
In the background?
yes,
Okay.
and you have Richmond, Burke, should add Columbia County?
It's not in the charter. Because I pulled it straight from the website. I thought about that.
But they are affected because their borders, we had meetings in Columbia County before.
I thought about that, but I didn't, it wasn't in that charter online.
Understand?
So I didn't, because then, you know, you can say that lots of the other little counties near it are also.
Well, there are no other counties near. You have Columbia, Richmond, Burke, and Columbia is the largest county. And
We do get people from
several-
McDuffie too who come.
Well, they're in Burke, but we've had,
Yeah, there's people,
yeah, but what I'm saying though is we have had meetings in Columbia County in the past since I've been on the board, more than one. Well, we met in, on Stevens Creek Road at the, Hilton.
That was November, December? That was Richmond County?
Richmond?
That's in Richmond County.
Really?
Yeah, we have met in the Savannah Rapids Pavilion in Columbia County.
Okay. Yeah, but you have,
Oh, I thought that was.
May I make another comment? I'm a new board member and so I only went to my first full board meeting last month. But I did notice that we barely had a quorum. And this doesn't affect the resolution, but somehow I think it needs to be addressed for the board members that if the meetings are going to be held more geographically diverse, the board members are going to have to make an obligation to come because we really were one person shy of a quorum in Savannah. I just point that out.
that's a valid point.
Getting back to your comment though, regardless of what the charter says, I agree that Columbia County is affected by SRS and should be included in this recommendation. If the charter's out of date, that's their problem.
We're gonna,
Oh, there you go.
regardless of Nina's research, we're gonna add Columbia County.
Are there any other, edits?
Just question, I mean, Harold, you said we were informed by DOE about the budgetary restraints. Do we have any say in how the budget's spent? I mean, is that on your plate, Harold? I don't know.
Well, in terms of transparency, if the budgetary restraint was an issue, it should have been addressed at least with the executive committee so that we can have some input into the decision-making process. In this case, we did not.
Yeah, okay, I understand. My follow-up is, does DOE give the executive committee, here's $75,000 for the year, you spend it as you choose, or?
No, they do not.
No.
We fall under TBS 100, which falls under the Director of Public Affairs. And what I'm trying to get is a CAB's budget where we have line items for those things that we are required to do. For instance, environmental justice. We are asked, we have an outreach function, and we are asked to attend these meetings, but yet still I was told there's no money to pay for mileage for members to go to this meeting. That should not be. And so that should be on that budget, and it should be allocated. If not, then take that mission away from, or that outreach away from us, if we cannot travel to it.
Great, I understand.
And it's nothing new because I've been on this board for 4 years now, a little over 4 years, and we have attended these EJ meetings, and every member that has attended the meeting received travel pay.
Oh, has received travel,
I have attended,
but now they've taken that travel
No,
reimbursement away.
so I can,
I got
for
you.
me, it's hard for me to ask a member to, one, to volunteer your time to go to these meetings, and then know, by the way, you have to pay for it. So I will address that, at our next, executive meeting.
Thank you.
Yeah, Bob Dorcab, I'd like to make a comment too. I think this is a very good recommendation that's been prepared and updated by David. But Harold, I'm just listening to you about the, knowing how the funding works. And if I understood you right, breaking down the funding into, more minute detail, like in other words, funding for mileage to go to EJ meetings. You know, what is the cost to go to Columbia or to Hilton Head versus just having the meetings here? I'm just anticipating the response. You know, like I like that idea that you know, if we saw what the budget ramifications were of doing this stuff.
I think, well, you know, look at it, it's the number of staff that they send to the meeting, I think. You're a former employee, isn't that generally because if we have a board meeting in Hilton Head, they send, I don't know how many DOE employees plus hotel, that's what drives up the cost. Here, they don't have to pay the hotel costs. And that makes a big difference. You talk about, you know, just one meeting that would be, and you put that times 3, that's the biggest difference in cost, I would imagine.
Right.
Yeah.
But Bob Dorcab again, I mean, I guess I just was anticipating that the overall response to this recommendation will just simply be, we can't afford to do this.
Probably what we'll do.
And if that's all we're going to get back, I mean, I'm not saying don't do the recommendation, but
I have a question. This is Rick Olson, DOE. Each year, when we put the budget together, we have to prioritize things. And if you're thinking about asking for these changes for 2016, because basically this year's budget is locked in. You know, if you strongly recommend this, you're basically asking DOE to consider this while we were finalizing our budget for FY16. Now I would encourage you to maybe can submit it, and the timing is correct now, because we're still deliberating the fine details of the budget for FY16. If there's a feeling that this could be, you know, we have to prioritize something else will have to be taken off the top and taken off the table, but I just encourage you to at least submit your desire on this thing and your strong feelings on it.
I don't think there's anybody that's against doing that, but I think what I hear you saying, Bob, is when we get a response, and the response is perhaps based upon budgetary restraints, we're hoping that DOE gives us a little more information than just that statement.
Yes.
In terms of what are the specific costs that are being avoided.
Right.
If I can add, I mean, you know, we all live in an age where we live on our computers too, so perhaps there might be something added to the recommendation about possibly looking into the possibility of having more electronic participation. Yes, that little thing over there. Because people don't necessarily, if people have access, if people are aware of the meeting and they want to attend the meeting and they have the means to do it by Skype or electronically, I'm not a computer person.
Google Groups, right, Jim?
Then maybe that should be encouraged as well, to inform the public that there will be this meeting and you can log onto your computer and we will be here and you will be there, but you will be able to talk to us. And then, perhaps the cost issue will be reduced if that's made as a suggestion, because clearly for a lot of us to travel, it's time consuming and we are not compensated for time. And like I said before, the participation in Savannah was not that good. So maybe that ought to be added as an additional recommendation, that they look into broadening the electronic participation for the public.
Well, I think we all know that that now occurs. I think what I hear you saying is making it clearer to the public that that's an option.
Yes.
Okay, I'll try and gear some more that addresses that.
Harold Simon, Cab. James, is there anything in the making to expand the meeting, for the full board meeting?
There are some technical difficulties. We'd have some additional equipment that we would need to purchase in order to make that work out. The major problem, if you want a real brief rundown on it, is that this camera focuses on sound and movement. Your full board setup, the U shape, is too big to actually focus on movement, and so there's no sound. And 90% of the movement around the table, or it can't capture the sound because of the microphone, so we have to do a line off the board. It defaults to movement then on what to focus on, and 90% of the movement around the table is actually us. Getting up and getting something, Tina getting up and down to get questions, she's taking pictures, I'm doing something. And so the few times that we've tried it, that recording was the CAP support team and not your meeting.
Okay.
It was probably the least helpful version.
I also don't want to get to a point where you can be online and that counts as your participation.
I mean, in the
For the full,
For the full board. I just don't want it, if that technology is there and easily accessible, because right now you are counted as present if you do participate online for committee meetings. And I would hate for there to be a full board meeting and there are 3 of us sitting around because most of us are on Skype.
Yeah.
It's not as effective.
But Mary's point.
My point was more for the public than for the board.
Yeah. Yeah, Bob Dorcab, I'd like to make a comment too that, Mary's talking about the public. George Snyder brought up the issue of, this cost with the Department of Energy going to these different locations. The technology exists for someone from, say, DOE or a subcontractor to actually be here in, Aiken or Savannah Riverside. They could do the presentation. You'd have a screen. They're talking. You have Skype. You have a microphone. In other words, we hear the presentation from. It's a remote presentation to where the full board meeting is. The presentation is, the slides and everything are there. The person's talking, and then the committee members and the public. The public isn't necessarily going to be able to ask questions at the full board presentation, but the committee members are. I mean, you could mitigate this expense of sending out DOE employees to Hilton Head, Columbia, Augusta, or not Augusta, but Savannah, whatever, by having the presentations done that way. They don't have to ship all these DOE employees. Does anybody have any feeling about that? Does that sound doable or interesting? Or
I'm the only person under 30 who hates Skype.
Yeah.
I don't think you get that same. I think it's good for public participation if you can't be somewhere as an alternative.
Mm-hmm.
But I would hate to get into a routine where DOE feels like, because they're going to look at it and think, well, of course we're going to have to do those because it's going to be a lot cheaper for us.
Mm-hmm.
And every meeting is probably going to turn into that.
Mm-hmm. And
then we're kind of in a movie theater.
Right.
And I don't want that part to get lost. Channeling Rose, because I'm sure Rose's ears are ringing right now, we've gotten from a group where when Harold and I first started on the CAB, we had huge hotel rooms, those boardrooms full of public participation, and it just seems to get smaller and smaller and smaller. And I just want to make sure that we shy away from anything that would make it even tinier.
Get donuts.
We do need donuts. No free soda next time.
We don't need it.
Yeah, Harold Simon, Cap. I think we do need our presenters at the physical location with us.
Okay.
If they're a valuable resource, they provide a wealth of information. And I don't think we can have the exchange that we do at the meeting if they're back in Savannah River on Skype or whatever method. So I think they need to be with us wherever we go.
James Street, Cab. In addressing Mary, I don't recall during the period of time that I've been a member of the Cab that we have come that close to not having a quorum present.
Yeah, y'all were real close.
We're real close.
And I'm seeing
Voting that morning, I'd have worried that all y'all weren't gonna show up for lunch.
that's the first time I think I've seen it, and I would say that I think the geographical locations of the meeting has an impact then on the Cab members too in terms of their attendance.
I agree.
So that's another factor we should look at, the impact it has on the attendance of the Cab members as well as the public in the location.
Well, I think Bob Dorr Cab again, I mean, this recommendation speaks to, requesting DOE to schedule meetings in different geographic locations. And then, of course, Mary Weber brought up the issue of, well, we had one down in Savannah and we weren't getting good board participation. I'm sorry, I wasn't there myself, so
Talking about you,
but, I mean, it shouldn't be a problem. I mean, to me, it wasn't a problem in the past for board members to go to Hilton Head and Charleston and Columbia, Augusta, wherever. And certainly the public participation seemed to be very robust when we did that. So,
Yes.
I, for one, support this recommendation as it currently stands. I think David's done a great job updating it. We're close to 6 o'clock and the next point of our agenda, but I, for one, would go ahead and want to move this recommendation to the full board. Any other comment?
Yeah, one other comment at our last full board, I just would like to say that one of the members of the public got up and addressed that issue about the geographical locations of our meetings and the convenience of being able to go to them versus one set location all the time. And these were individuals who were coming from Atlanta, and they was concerned about it. They did bring that up, so.
I read that night. Yeah. They came up to us and were really clear. And I think they have their own numbers that they keep of public participation at our meetings. They have a little check mark, and they were able to show a decrease.
Attendance is going down.
Yes, she called me up.
I bet she did call you up. I think I gave her your number.
Do we have to do a vote on whether to proceed?
I believe we do, yes.
No, you just make a decision if you wanted to go forward.
Okay. Well, I'm gonna ask the committee that's here, does this committee believe we should take this recommendation and move forward to the full board meeting?
Yes.
I vote yes.
Yes, I vote yes.
Okay, I think that's a unanimous vote. So this recommendation, now the protocol for this would be that, this recommendation will then be emailed as part of the agenda for the full board meeting in July, and other board members could solicit some more comments to the recommendation manager. So you may get some more comments, but you're free to incorporate those, and then I guess James Tanner will finalize that for you in the end, and then
All I'm gonna do is mail it out.
Right.
okay.
I need
You're gonna-
me to get it to you, James, final version.
Let me get back to you.
Okay.
today. It's
They make the final changes in the full board, right?
Yeah.
that they do.
Yeah, those comments that may be generated before the full board meeting, if they go to David, he can keep track of them, and then when you present this recommendation to the full board, those comments can be brought up, and we can amend them during that meeting, and then, we would make a final, the full board would make a final vote on day 2 of the meeting. So I think we're done with this, unless you, yes.
Are you referring to the comments that are submitted to Dave prior to Dave submitting that, like, final draft recommendation to Dave?
Well, James Tanner sends out this recommendation to the full board for the meeting, and then if they have any comments for change that they'd like to make, they can submit them to Dave Hoyle.
Or they can address them at the meeting.
Or they can address them at the
Combined
meeting.
committee meeting.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that's just the best way to
Yeah,
handle it.
just
Right.
come bring them with you.
Right. Right. So, okay. I think we'll move forward. We'll move forward with the recommendation. And the last topic on our agenda tonight is that we have a public comment period. So I will ask anyone from the public, do they have any comments that they'd like to make to our committee? Any particular issue? I'd like to stick to the agenda, but if there's any burning issues in the community, anybody have anything? Okay, well, if we don't have any public comments, I'll ask one more time, has everyone from this committee signed in on our board tonight? Mary, you probably did not. So Mary, you should sign in. Is there any, well, we did identify people online when we started the meeting.
Oh, is there anybody any questions online?
Are there any questions from anybody who's online regarding this meeting? Okay, I do not hear any public comments coming in that way. If there's no other points of, that need to be made, I'm going to ask that this committee meeting be adjourned. Okay.
Whenever you're ready, Tom.
That outlet looks professionally.
Okay, I'll call the meeting to order. I'm Tom Barnes, chairman of the committee. Other members of the committee are Bill Roden, our vice chair, Louis Chavis, Don Gillis, Eleanor Hobson, Ed Sturkin, and Louis Walters. And James, do we have anybody online?
At the moment.
Not at the moment. Okay. All right, let me first start by saying in DOE's response to recommendation 322 at each committee meeting, the representative DOE point of contact will provide a brief status update of ongoing Savannah River site activities relevant to this committee's purpose. Ms. Avery Hammett will begin a short update. I would ask people to hold their questions to the end. This is an update that's intended for informational purposes only and is not a presentation. So, Avery, I'll turn it over to you, please, ma'am.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. Let's see. I've actually compiled these, and they're kind of a mouthful, so just sort of bear with me. Let's see. Okay. Progress continues on the 2014 annual site environmental report, and DOE will have that available to the public on or before October 3rd of this year. There were 2 environmental bulletins issued in the past month, and I thought I knew what environmental bulletins were, but I called the site environmental bulletin expert just so that I could speak with some sort of knowledge about this, and I actually learned a few things, so I thought I would maybe pass that on before I read what the bulletins are. Environmental bulletins are issued by SRS when there are any environmental actions or issues that the public needs to know about. So those are documents that are available for public comment, or any advisories or actions that DHEC puts out, if DHEC is issuing a permit, things like that. So that they will pertain to the National Environmental Policy Act, which is NEPA, the Resource Conservation and Recovery Act, which is RCRA, or a South Carolina DHEC announcement. So the 2 bulletins that were put out in the past month are on May 26th, there was an industrial wastewater closure module for liquid waste tank 12H, which is in the H tank farm, and that was made available for public comment. This module supports the removal of tank 12H from service, and there's a 30-day public comment period, which will conclude on June 24th. So you can provide comments in writing by June 24th. And that is available on the SRS website. And the second one is a public notice was issued for the requested renewal of the transuranic waste, which is TRUE waste, PADS, Hazardous Waste Resource Conservation and Recovery Act permit renewal application. That's a mouthful I was talking about. So the current permit expires December 15th, 2015, and written comments may be sent to the South Carolina Department of Health and Environmental Control, and all comments will be considered in the final decision. And the decision is pertaining to the waste pads that are used to store, process, and repackage containers in preparation for shipment of hazardous, mixed, and radioactive transuranic waste. And when I spoke to the lady who's in charge of issuing the environmental bulletins, she gave me her contact information. So I have that if anybody is interested in getting on the mailing list for the environmental bulletins. you are not on it already. Okay, on May 11th, senior officials from the Department of Energy, U.S. Representative Joe Wilson, and Amoresco representatives conducted a ceremonial groundbreaking to mark the start of a new project for a biomass heating plant that will increase critical steam security and provide additional green power at SRS. The new biomass plant represents a subsequent modification to DOE's original 20-megawatt biomass cogeneration facility, currently operated and maintained by Amoresco. There was a National Environmental Policy Act finding of no significant impact conducted or completed, and that documentation is currently going through DOE's security review for public release, and as soon as that review is complete, it will be posted on the DOE website. The May National Environmental Policy Act, status report documenting any environmental impact statements and environmental assessments involving the Savannah River site, is available on the DOE external website, and that's updated monthly, so that every month is available. There's an annual radioactive air emissions report that is due to the Environmental Protection Agency and South Carolina Department of Health and Environmental Control and Department of Energy headquarters. It's due no later than June 30th, so the site is compiling that right now. And on Tuesday, May 26th, personnel from South Carolina Department of Health and Environmental Control Aiken office conducted a routine quarterly inspection of the 3 SRS solid waste landfills, and all 3 landfills were given the highest possible rating. And the Department of Energy Environmental Management Office in headquarters is assembling and prioritizing a complex-wide list of all of the site's top deactivation and decommissioning candidates for future funding requests. So SRS, D&D, which is deactivation and decommissioning, personnel are working on providing information for that list. And let's see, field work for the D area ash basin project continues, and currently ash consolidation activities are in progress. And the last thing is the Savannah River Site Community Reuse Organization, which you may have heard referred to as the SRS CRO. And I think these may have been mentioned at the last meeting as one of some of the CRO activities actually fall under strategic and legacy management, but they're doing some deactivation work, so that falls under this. So I thought I would include it too. So they are removing 11 excess trailers from the site through the asset transition program. This work is being conducted with all of the required demolition permits and will help reduce site overhead on unused structures. And they are also removing equipment from the deactivated D area powerhouse. They are currently removing 8 large transformers. Each piece of equipment removed weighed approximately 20 tons. Which seems pretty heavy. The work is being performed in a safe manner using appropriate safety documentation. And just in case everybody doesn't know, the mission of the SRS Community Reuse Organization is to facilitate economic development opportunities associated with Savannah River Site technology, capabilities, and missions, and to serve as an informed, unified community voice for the 5-county, 2-state region. The 2015 SRS Community Reuse Organization meeting schedule is available on their website, which is www.srscrow.org. And they have lots of fact sheets and stuff on their website. Interesting information there. And that's it. Do you have any questions?
Anybody have any questions? Anybody on the line yet? James?
There might be somebody on the conference call, but there may not be anyone with any questions.
Okay.
Hi, this is Deidre Lloyd with EPA. I'm on.
Okay. Thank you. Do you have a question?
No, I just had a little trouble getting on in the beginning, so I wanted to let you know I was on.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Avery, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
We have a committee discussion now on several recommendations. Let me first begin by one that we've had, recommendation number 329. I think at our last full cab meeting, we closed four. We had four or five open recommendations, and four of them we closed. 329 we carried over because we hadn't had a minute to discuss it in committee. I've asked everybody at that meeting to please review it, and I hope they've had time to do it to see if they wanted to keep this open or close it. Frankly, I'm ready to close it. We've had a response since February 24th from the Department of Energy. They responded to all of the points that we made. Recommendations, they responded to them and accepted all of them with the exception of the first one. We said schedule, the first recommendation was schedule public comment periods on documents that are relevant to the federal facility agreement and other documents that are a concern to the public in a time frame that allows the board to take formal written action. The response was, we do not accept this subpart. Public comment periods conform to the requirements of the Comprehensive Environmental Response Compensation and Liability Act, the Resource Conservation and Recovery Act, and to the enforceable project schedules and milestones in the federal facility agreement. More importantly, the public provides comments directly to DOE, and the CAB is not responsible for collecting and compiling that input before it is provided to DOE. Although a CAB recommendation is welcome, a formal CAB recommendation on each document is probably not feasible and not essential to the process of public input on cleanup decisions. So I think we probably got the best response we're going to get from DOE on this, and my recommendation would be that we move this forward to close this at the July full board meeting. Is there anybody that would like to have this remain open? Or if not, by consensus, we'll take it to the full board in July and ask that this be closed? Okay, thank you very much.
Harold Simon.
Okay, Harold.
Once your committee decides to close the recommendation, you're really not looking for the board's permission, you're just reporting to them that you closed it.
Okay, all right. We'll just report to them that we're closing. Okay, thank you. Okay, the next one is a recommendation on the annual commitment decision. Avery is going to help us with that again.
Okay, this discussion is one that the CAB support team and I have been talking about, and it's actually going to be more relevant for some of the other committees than this committee because we don't have too many annual requirements, but a lot of the work plan topics are items that DOE has committed to presenting annually to the CAB, and so we just wanted to sort of touch base and make sure that these topics are still topics that you want to see, and if we need to sort of tweak it or change how often we give the presentation. We don't have very many on this committee. There are 3. But some of the other committees have a lot, so I think all the committees are going to go through the same exercise and maybe cut out some of the things that are out there. But, okay, so the 3 that we have that require annual commitments, number 279, which states that the federal facility agreement update will be provided annually. And the recommendation mentions providing 2 different presentations at 2 different times. And we have been doing that, and we've sort of taken care of that this year by consolidating to the one presentation that Brian Hennessy gives. And we've shifted the timing, so it makes more sense with when Appendix E is issued. So I think that item is pretty much sort of resolved, unless you guys don't want that presentation annually anymore. So I think we're consolidating that from 2 to 1.
Yeah, good.
Has met, sort of streamlines that process. Number 294 is the recommendation title was Development of Environmental Review Roadmap and Document Listing. This is the discussion about the website, right? The one with the drop down. Okay. So this is the one where DOE committed to giving an annual update on the status of the items on the drop down tab. Doesn't sound right. And so does this committee want to have an annual update on the SRS website items, the items that are listed on the drop down tab? Does
anybody want an annual update on that?
What are the items on the drop-down tab?
Things that are coming up for public review, things that change, things that public, kind of like what Avery just said, that documents available for public review or public comment.
Things that can change on a monthly basis, kind of things?
I'm assuming I don't do with the documents.
Yeah, that's right. I was going to mention that the talking points kind of covers that, because that's where I go for my talking points, are right to the drop down to the website. That's the first place I go and see what's out there. So it may actually be sort of redundant with every other month.
Or that this could be called covering that issue.
Or exactly. So I don't know.
Like guilty birds.
When is that presentation starting?
Into the year.
And that was kind of my point. It's Dawn Gillis, that was my point, that if it's an annual thing and these things on this drop-down tab are changing that often, and we're already getting an every 2-month update, then.
There's probably more stuff too, that y'all would like to hear rather than a website update.
Right. Yeah.
So what do we need to do to change that annual commitment? Okay. Do we need to issue?
No, I was thinking of you up front.
Well, doesn't it kind of have a caveat? Review the report on an annual basis in conjunction with the CAB and determine if any changes need to be made to maintain the usefulness. 294. Yeah, I'm looking at it. So is it useful for this committee? Yeah. So I don't.
It gives us an out anyway.
Yeah, I think that's how they wrote it.
That's we were, Avery and I kind of like throwing this around. We're trying to figure out if it's good for y'all to write a recommendation and then just cite, like if you said, we're developing a recommendation, and in that recommendation, you say for 294 and 294, we would like it to be as needed. You know what I mean? Like an update as needed if necessary, since it's already being covered by the next recommendation. And then I guess like 279, we would like to continue this annual update. That would be how you address your 3. Other committees are going to have to do the same thing. So, does that answer your question?
I know that, I remember the reason that we did it was just so at a full board meeting, there could just be like a little 10-minute snapshot for the public to come of the environmental bulletin and the NEPA. And I don't think it was supposed to be maybe as formal, but maybe just something short so people who are in the public kind of to get like a highlight of any big change.
Okay, what does the committee want to do?
Is it covered within Avery's update? Because she did just say that something was available for public comment online. And then I know that it's like every now and then Terry has it in his updates or the manager's talking points.
I think it'd be covered in her updates.
I agree.
Okay. Okay.
We'll make a note.
We'll figure out the best.
We'll figure out the option, yeah.
mechanism to make sure it's done as needed, other than.
Right, okay, that'd be good, okay.
And then the third one actually is the monthly update.
It's the monthly update.
So I don't guess I'm getting out of that. But so, yeah, the third one is updates provided to the Citizens Advisory Board at the bi-monthly committee meeting, and via email. I'm not doing.
That's what, Jim GC is doing most of the via email stuff when he sends y'all the environmental, not report, like SRS daily, what are they called? Anyway.
Yeah.
And when he sends something that's relevant to the CAB and we forward that to y'all, that's the via email part.
So I think that's probably still relevant. But so that was what that topic on the agenda.
Okay. Is that it? Okay, thank you very much. Okay, we have a, draft recommendation on, health effects. Now, this is not the one that they just discussed. No. Let me go back. Let me change this. We got one that was just discussed in the committee before this, improved public participation. I don't know that we can add anything to this. I assume everybody has read this. If not, let me read the recommendations real quickly. The SRS Citizens Advisory Board recommends that the Department of Energy, 1, hold SRS CAB meetings in a more geographically diverse manner to allow counties affected by SRS to host more regional meetings and enable the greatest public participation. Restating SRS CAB meetings in Hilton Head, Columbia, and Augusta on a frequent basis will enhance the public's opportunity to attend and actively participate. Maximize efforts to advise CAB meetings and alert the public. This should include updated social media information, newspaper information, and enhancing ways to advertise CAB meetings through city and county council notifications. Restore funding for advertising to the SRS CAB to improve advertising of full board and committee meetings to broadly notify the public. Advertising should include newspapers in the host city of the meeting. And the last recommendation, enable CAB representation when planning SRS local public education and outreach events such as information pods, public tours, Earth Day, etc. I don't have any problem with the recommendations. I think we're probably wasting our time, though, asking that we go around all these cities again. I mean, we've been told time and time again that funding is not available, you know, to go to the various places. You know, I wish it were. If it's not, it's not. And that most of them are, you know, we would have one downstream meeting a year, maybe, possibly two if funding was available. Other than that, all of the full CAB meetings would be held here in New Ellington. So I can't see just beating a dead horse, so to speak, on this. But
I totally agree that the probability of getting funding is probably nil. However, putting the recommendation out there and making DOE say, sorry, we can't pay for it, puts it on the table that we really do want it. And if you know, if enough of the cabs across the country start putting these kinds of things together, Harold, it's your job to go talk to the rest of the cabs, right? that maybe somebody will kick some. Then the money's got to come from somewhere. Yeah. We complain about not having funding for other things, and you know, so it's rob Peter to pay Paul type thing. But I don't have a problem putting it out there and DOE telling us, sorry, Charlie, no funding.
Yeah, I agree. You know, I'm just saying, I think, you know, we're probably going to get an answer, no, we can't expand it. And, you know, I don't want anybody to be surprised if we get that kind of response. But I don't see anything wrong with the recommendation that previous committee put together with this. We're on this as a co-sponsor. So we'll join them in sending it. You're sending it forward to full CAB in July, right? Well, we'll join.
I was adding Columbia County to the list in the third paragraph.
Okay. So if anybody got any recommendations or changes they would like to see made in this? If not, we'll just join, previous committee in presenting this to the, full cab in July. Is everybody agreeable with that?
Yep.
Okay, good, thank you. Okay, next we have a public participation. No, I'm sorry, that was just it. I'm sorry, health effects reporting by the Savannah Riverside. I'm not real sure what this is. Who can enlighten me on this some? I mean, I know this.
So I wrote this, but I was waiting for someone else to jump in as a recommendation manager, so I'd have to put my name on it. But that would be great. I think it came out of our last full board meeting when people were concerned about the report about the water testing and the levels that are in the water, and people were just really concerned. So I just pulled that public health assessment, and just the recommendations basically say that the health and welfare of people is a primary concern, and continue to monitor for health and environmental effects of cleanup for activities, the site, work with the CDC to make available copies of the public health assessment at meetings, and work with the CDC to condense the findings of the public health assessment and make it readable for the general public. I think a lot of these things are already being done, but since the CAB is supposed to be sort of the conduit where DOE can come together and meet with the public, just as a way to incorporate that. I think that presentation where we heard about the water and the water sampling probably generated the most discussion in those 2 days that we had. And you could kind of visibly see people in the room when you saw what the standard was of the water and then how it kind of changed as it went downstream. And since it's already being monitored by 2 other agencies, it might be nice to kind of pull some of that pressure off of DOE when they make presentations and have the CDC and the ATSDR report.
I agree. Okay.
But I can't have my name on it, right? Because vice chair doesn't have to be assigned to someone else as a recommendation manager? Oh, I thought it had to be.
Harold Simon, CAB. Any member of the board can draft a recommendation and submit it to the responsible committee. If the committee chair accepts that recommendation, then the committee chair will assign a recommendation manager to that recommendation to be processed through the committee and then to the board. Since you drafted it, then you may be able to work with the recommendation manager to help them on that process.
Okay. All right, then we need a recommendation manager. Is anybody on the committee willing to be recommendations manager for this, for our July full cab meeting?
I nominate Nina.
I worked really hard on this, but somebody else has to help. I had to read reports and have like Google up at the same time, so. It was I think Dawn, since she nominated me, should be the recommendation manager.
No.
All right, nobody wants to do it, I'll do it. Nobody wants to do it. I agree with the recommendation. I like the recommendation. I appreciate Nina, sending this out. So I'll take care of that, and we'll put it on the agenda for approval at the July full cab meeting.
I'd have one question on your number 3. What kind of a response were you expecting from DOE on your recommendation number 3?
Nothing. I just thought it would be good to put it out there. I think it's going to be, I imagine it's going to say something like, we appreciate that, and that's our utmost concern as well. But
would that be better to put in the body and the background?
I thought about that too, but I want people, when they come as public and voice their concerns over and over again, to feel like we're incorporating that somehow.
Okay.
That's a good point.
Harold Simon, CAB. In the recommendation itself, recommendation at the end, we have to be a little more specific in terms of what we want, what action do we want DOE to comply with. It has to be measurable so that when we receive a response, we can clearly see if that response satisfies each recommendation on that list. So we've got to be specific in terms of what we're asking them to deliver. But if we don't, they can come back with a vague response.
Well, I mean, I think most of the responses that are vague because
But
a lot of them fall.
you understand the
yeah,
point I'm making.
I do, and I understand that the response is going to be probably pretty generic, but I want that out there.
So what I recommend is that, you guys just take a look at those recommendations and see how you can make them a little more substantive.
Yeah, I think all of them are, except the one that Don found, number 3. But yeah, we can definitely
Work on it.
go over it and.
We'll take a look at that. But I really think, you know, that I understand what you're saying out there. The people, particularly from the Georgia side, really want to know what is the effects of all this monitoring. You know, what are the levels? You know, are there any dangers? You know, if so, what are they? I think that's essentially what they want to know, in written in plain English that they can understand. But I'll be the recommendations manager on this. I don't mind doing that, and I'll talk with Nina.
Yeah, Nina will work with you.
Huh?
Nina will work with you.
Yeah, she will.
Not voluntarily, but.
Well, you obviously have some energy in here.
Well, I just think it's, you know, water is something that's really important for people. And, you know, when you read through that report, where a lot of it couldn't be measured because there's a lack of needed information, it's kind of scary. I think that scared a lot of people at that hearing at our meeting. And if the CDC is already monitoring it and other groups are monitoring it, we need to step up.
Well, I just think, you know, when you talk about monitoring water and so forth, you know, if you don't get technical with it at all, just keep it real simple. Here's what we monitor. Here's how we monitor. And here's how often we monitor. And here's what we found, you know.
Yeah.
And here's what the limits are.
Right, and here are the limits, and all this stuff was was well under acceptable limits, you know. And if that I think that's what people want. They don't want a document that's 50 pages long with all this technical stuff in it and acronyms that they're not going to understand. They're going to read the first 2 sentences and throw it down. So
I agree.
We'll proceed with that. Does anybody have any other comments on that? Any other changes? Or if not, then I'll be happy to work with Nina, and we'll get a document together to advance to the full board in July. Okay, we're at the place now of public comment. If we have any public that would like to comment.
You're the public.
Yeah.
I think
about to call on that.
this is Dawn Cab again. On the public participation one, this is a lot of what Dave's trying to get at. Is there something that we can do as a CAB, something that the administration, something DOE can do as a CAB to get the information out to the public more, so that we have more public that comes, and they don't just come for hot topics, they come for you know, regular informational things.
Yeah.
So so it's not all just the you know, having meetings at other places and spending money, but you know, what advertising is done and what can we do more to try to get more people to come to these things.
Yeah.
Great.
But I think that we're just walking CAB up, but I think one way of taking a position on that, and I totally agree with you. Our purpose is what I was really leading to was to determine what has occurred. At what point did we have a peak public attendance? You know, we're talking many years. So we can look at it all kinds and see
what was occurring and what was the peak public participation.
Probably a tritium release or something like that.
Any other comments from the committee? From anybody on anything?
I just want to make sure, did you close recommendations tonight, or you want to still take it to the full board? Like, because remember Harold offered clarification, asking you to know for my tracking purposes, did you?
329, I want to close. Yes.
Make sure.
If it doesn't have to go to full board, let's close it.
And just the database.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, no other questions or comments, then we will stand adjourned.